Okay, we're back on. In 2006, you started Picture Day Productions with Chris Lloyd. How did that come about?
Well, I came when Stacked ended. We start again. When Stacked ended, I looked at myself. And I basically said, "What? How did I get here?" It was really one of those moments. Like, here I was, working on shows with the likes of Kelsey Grammer and Wendy Malick and David Spade, and Laura and great people and David Hyde Pierce and Steven Weber and Thomas Hayden Church and Tony Shalhoub, people who were all amazing. And how did I get to the place where I did Stacked? And I said, I need to take some time off. Like, I really need to stop. What it really was also, I will say, about that period with Stacked, I had just come off this long deal with Fox. I took a number of shots at it. Stark Raving Mad, Oliver Bean, Greg the Bunny. Is there something I'm forgetting? There might be. And they didn't, a couple other pilots, they didn't pan out. And I felt a little bit guilty. Like, I owe you guys a hit in my mind. I'm a kid from the Midwest. Someone pays you money, you want them to feel they got their money's worth. And I've always said, I want everybody with whom I get into business to be glad they got into business with me. That, to me, is one of my big goals. That nobody says that was a bad idea, getting into business with that guy. So I felt that they had spent an enormous amount of money, both on my salary and on all the various productions that were not going to make money, and I didn't deliver for them. So here's a surefire commercial crowd pleaser, Pam Anderson in a Cheers-like classic sitcom setup. That'll do it. That'll be their hit. It, of course, wasn't, and I went, okay, what am I doing wrong here? My judgment is off. I'm making bad decisions. So I took 6 months off and did nothing, and just tried to regroup. And during that time, I wrote a little pilot about my family. One day, I just sat down and started writing a funny exchange happened in my kitchen, and I said, I'm going to write that down in case I ever need a funny exchange with a family. And I just kept writing and writing and writing, and before I knew it, 3 days later, it was a pilot. And I took it, and it was very true to my life, and there was no sense of where does it play or what is that commercial. It was my life, and I took it, and I went, I love it, and I put it in a drawer, and I just checked out. And then basically, in a nutshell, Chris had a similar experience. We had been friends for a long time. He had done a couple of shows with Joe Keenan. One, they couldn't cast it, so it didn't make it on the air. It had been picked up, but they couldn't cast it, so it didn't make it on the air. Another one was on the air for a while and pulled, and frustrating times for him as well. His deal ended. My deal, I said goodbye to Fox. I don't know if they would have upped my deal at that time or not. I just called them and said, thank you. I'm sorry I didn't deliver a hit for you, but thank you. I'm checking out for a while. And I think that was a weird call that they got. They weren't expecting that. And so then one day, we were out for lunch, Chris and I, just as friends, and the idea of maybe working together started to come up, that maybe I needed a fresh take on things. There were aspects of my personality where I am a bit impulsive, and I jump into things like that show. And Chris is very, he thinks about things for a long time, and he carefully weighs that, and sometimes will weigh it so long that the opportunity has passed by. And so right in the middle there is a really good decision maker. And we decided basically, like, what would happen if we teamed up? It's too hard to do this job by yourself anyway. And we approached a couple different studios, and fortunately they were all interested, and we chose to come back here to Fox.
The first show you did was Back to You?
Mm-hmm. We started talking, so then we got an office here. We'd come in and start talking about ideas, blah, blah, blah. We had a few different ideas. One of them kind of stemmed from, the germ of it stemmed from my news days. And because to me, Kelsey was always basically, we started to hear ramblings, or Chris had started to hear ramblings that Kelsey wanted to get back in and do another show. And Chris was still pretty tight with Kelsey. And so I said, well, I told the story about this very funny character from Madison who was this sort of overblown anchorman in a small town, but he talked like this. And there's a famous story about him that I hope it's not apocryphal because I've told it a million times. But apparently the night John Lennon was killed, they went to the film package. They showed the people out in the streets and the scene, and terrible, terrible, terrible. And he came back, and in his big dramatic moment, he looked at the camera and he said, "Lennon is survived by his wife, Topo Gigio." So Kelsey could play that character, like an overblown, gigantic fish in a small pond. Seemed funny to me. And so we just started talking about, different scenarios and how that would work. And one day we went up to Kelsey's house, and we just pitched him the idea. And he goes, "What the hell, I'm in." "Sure, what the hell, I'm in." Now, we got, "Great, fantastic." And what we later learned was, once I read the script, if it's funny, I'm in. So we, as quickly as possible, had to write that script because we didn't want to sell it without Kelsey. So we did. We then attached Patricia Heaton and Ty Burrell and Josh Gad and Fred Willard. It is a dream cast. We then attached Jimmy Burrows. Oh my God. Every ingredient you could possibly ask for. And then we took it to the wrong network. And you can make a million decisions right, and you can make one decision wrong, and that'll kill you. And that's this business. It just didn't belong on Fox. It didn't fit in here. Had it gone to CBS, in my opinion, two things would have happened. It would still be on the air on CBS, and Modern Family would not have come to exist. So,
did Fox give you a lot of no's? I mean, did they change anything, or was it just that it was not the right network audience?
By the end, they gave us a few notes, big things. And at that point, we didn't do anything we disagreed with, but we did some things that we thought were unnecessary and didn't help. At the end of the day, listen, I will say I found that show to be frustrating for me personally, because I think, and I didn't realize it, and maybe it was a culmination of sort of Stacked and Back to You. While I thought everybody I worked with on the show is brilliant. I really, at that moment, standing on that floor, came to realize I don't want to do multicam anymore. I'm done. I can't listen to these rhythms anymore. I can't watch a moment that is small be made large because it needs to be made large because it's in front of an audience. I kept thinking about that pilot in my drawer that was small and personal and subtle, and I didn't want to do it anymore. And I'd see us doing things, big wacky moments, and there was enthusiasm and the crowd was laughing, and I hated it. I hated those moments. I'm like, this is a terrible joke. And we're doing it because it's to me, it's the equivalent of dropping your pants. You get a laugh. And I was being overly harsh about it, but I had reached that point. It was a personal, internal, personal moment for me. I don't think Chris was on the same page in terms of being sick of multicam. It's really he hadn't done single camera up to that point. He didn't even know that world, and there were things about that world I was dreading, but I said I just wanted to. When that was canceled and we again licked our wounds for a while and came back together, I just said, we both said I just want to do something real. More than anything else, I want it to be real. I don't want there to be a false, fakey, sitcom-y moment in it. Let's try something different. Again, to me, if I look back on it as the big thing, that's that Larry Sanders moment when I said, I want to do that. I want it to I want that different kind of writing. That's what this moment was for me. I can't do it anymore. So we had a couple of different ideas. We started telling stories about our families and what, just as you do when you're two guys sitting around a room, what happened to you this weekend? Oh my God, I got in the biggest fight over this. And then Griffin came in and said, da 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 da, and it's funny. And we start realizing that this is a show that's not on TV. And, our lives are different than our parents' lives were in parenting. There are different challenges today. And Raymond was a brilliant show that I loved. But it was a classic by design, a classic sitcom. And Raymond is timeless, in my opinion, which is why it will hold up forever. And I'm a giant fan of everybody on that show and Phil. But it wasn't dealing, other than with the fact that the changing role of women a little bit, even though Patricia Heaton's character didn't work as I recall. It was a classic sitcom that could have been in the 70s. And no one was talking about the things that we were dealing with. Cell phones, the internet, gay marriage, gay people raising an adopted baby. Those things, that wasn't being talked about. So we said, let's do that. Let's combine all of that. Let's do a family show where the kids aren't cutesy and they're not props that come in and run upstairs so the comedy could begin. Because in my house, they're an integral part of the comedy. Let's do it in a way that feels relatable and fresh and makes it feel current to today. People are watching reality shows. That's their level of what feels real to them right now, even though those are wildly false and heightened and elevated. But let's try to give them a sense of that reality. So we started talking about all the different ways we could set that up. We very quickly came up with the idea of doing it as a mockumentary style. I had done a little pilot for Fox that I had shot and produced for $30,000 all in, which was a mockumentary called Foot Hooker, about a rock band from the States that is huge in Asia but can't get arrested here. And so they do a reality show to try to get themselves known here. And it was sort of a Spinal Tappy kind of a show. I directed it, and I loved the form. I loved the process. The looseness of the cameras, the pop into an interview, I loved it. So we really wanted to do that, make it a mockumentary. And we thought that would make it feel less like Cosby, less like, Family Ties, less like Raymond. And then it was about constructing the family. How do we do that? Because we had both worked on Wings and Frasier, those were both shows about adult siblings and adults with parents, not only with kids but with parents, and we realized how rich that was. So we wanted to have that as well, some interconnectivity. I'm not exactly sure how we landed on 3 families, but we did. And the idea of telling multiple stories. And we sat around for a long time coming up with how they would be, how we would organize them or conceive them. Are they 3 families in a cul-de-sac? Are they 3 siblings? A gay guy with his partner raising a child, traditional family, and a divorced mom who's dating. All 3 brothers and sisters. Valid. That probably would have worked. But from the beginning, we knew we wanted to do a family that was conventional. And to me, I like the idea of sort of loosely basing it on, and I mean loosely because Chris was part of all this, of course. Loosely basing it on my family because it's what I knew. I have 2 daughters and a son. They're the same basic makeup as Haley, Alex, and Luke. Their house is not too different from my house. The things that they're dealing with are many of the things that, for the pilot process I was dealing with, and now what all the writers are dealing with. And then we knew we wanted a gay couple raising a child, and we said from the very beginning, this is going to mean we probably won't be a giant hit. And we both said, well, you can't do a show about this without this. So we'll just do the best we can, and yes, it'll turn off a large portion of America, but it has to be. And then it was the third piece that we needed. Somewhere along the lines, we came up with the idea of what if that third family member is a parent? Like George Siegel was in Just Shoot Me, like Martin, John Mahoney was in Frasier. That's rich stuff as well. Wouldn't it be nice to have that? Great. And wouldn't it be great if he was married to a much younger woman, cross-cultural, even better, and instead of getting the trophy wife that he thought he was getting, it came with a lot of baggage, her son. And that was the key. And it was a lot of characters, 11, if you count Lily, who was really mostly a prop in the pilot. But we spent a lot of time really figuring out who those characters were and what the relationships were to each other, not just Claire to Phil, but Claire to Gloria, Claire to Mitchell, and Gloria to Phil, and all those. There are 1,000 combinations there, and we spent a month honing those characters to try to figure out who they were and what made them funny.
Did you have any actors in mind at that point?
Yeah. We wrote it for Ty Burrell as Phil. We wrote it for Sofia Vergara. We wrote it for Ed O'Neill was one of 2 choices we had for Jay, and then the rest of them were all people who we hadn't imagined. We had different people in mind, just because for my process, I like to write with an actor in mind. Even if I don't think I can get that actor, it helps me with a voice. So I made a PowerPoint, like a keynote presentation on my computer, because now it was time to go pitch it. There were 10 characters. That's a lot to keep in mind if you're just talking and trying to lay out this story. And originally, by the way, it was told through the eyes of a Dutch documentary filmmaker. That was a whole little side thing that we did away with eventually. But we made this presentation on a computer that took people through it with pictures of various actors, some of which we ended up with, some were different. And we went around and pitched it to the 3 networks. Not Fox. I had sworn off Fox at that point. Enough. I've run into that brick wall too many times. Let's go fail somewhere new. And NBC said, we love it, but we're already doing 2 shows that are mockumentaries because they had just bought Parks and Rec, and they had The Office. So if you can lose the documentary part, we want it. We said no. CBS, we love it, we want it. And ABC, that's where we saw it from the very beginning. We just it felt right to us. That was a family network. That was the history of that. And I had a good relationship with Steve McPherson from Just Shoot Me days. He was the junior executive on that. And we had a pitch meeting for that because he was leaving town, and so we had a pitch meeting at my agent's house, which was really fortuitous because here it was in this family house that we had this pitch meeting about a family show, and I was showing him the PowerPoint, and he said, well, I love it. What kind of stories do you think you'll tell? And we started talking about some of the stories, and I started conveying the story of when my son I got my son a BB gun, and I said, if you ever shoot anything living, I'm going to shoot you with it. That's our deal. No birds, no animals. I don't want you killing anything. I don't want you shooting any of your friends. And if somebody gets hurt, if you shoot anybody, I'm going to shoot you. You're cool with that? Absolutely. One day I'm in the kitchen. I hear his cousin scream. Griffin shot his cousin. It was time to line Griffin up and shoot Griffin. We videotaped that moment because we all thought it was funny. It was these plastic BBs. They hurt, but they don't do any damage. And we videotaped it, and I said, well, I started telling that story, and all of a sudden I realized, wait a minute, and I go into my computer, and I have the footage of it. I go, like this, and I play that. Done. We want it. What do we do? We want this show. So off we went. And we had to write that. Took a while. We saw, Jeff Greenberg, our casting director, saw, I believe, 1,400 people for casting for 10 roles. Chris and I saw, of those, about 400 and something. And of course, in a little bit of nice irony, turns out Mitch and Cam are 2 of the most popular characters on the show. and two of the reasons why America loves him so much, or loves the show so much.
Let's go through the characters and also the actors who play them. Just give us a little taste of what, who they are. Jay Pritchett, Ed O'Neill.
Jay's a curmudgeon. He had a tough first wife who was a handful. She was kind of never happy, and he always kind of secretly resented it, but kept it down. And so when they got divorced, he said, and he made some money. He was self-made, blue-collar guy, but made some money at the business, all on his own. He said, my next wife is going to be easy street, beautiful, young, enough of this bitter woman stuff, and then bit off way more than he could chew.
Okay, and Ed O'Neill, the actor who plays him?
Ed is the greatest. We had heard that from the beginning, that Ed is as nice as it gets. The other actor that we were looking at had a reputation for being difficult. And they both are wonderful actors. But Ed is like an even keel. He just is a guy that's no BS at all. Do the job. Got it. Good. I'm going home. Lovely. The first person to call me on a Thursday morning to say, great show last night. Great show. Loved it. Every Thursday, I get a call from Ed O'Neill. Great show last night. He's just a real gentleman, and I think that he is a really nice, a perfect person to have as the number one on your call sheet.
Sofia Vergara as Gloria.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's great about Sofia is that she exceeded everybody's expectations. We had heard from a friend who worked with her on a show that she was funny, that she is funny. But we didn't know how funny. There aren't many people who look like her in the world. So the list is very short of potential Glorias it was her. And I think from the minute she opened her mouth at the table read, people started laughing. She just blew everybody away. She commits so fully. She's got such natural timing and such a natural sense of humor, and she's very dry, and she's an amazing sense of self. I always marvel at how much women love Sofia Vergara. It's a testament to her charm and her wit and her self-confidence, and just what a wonderful person she is. It has been fun to watch her star rise so much. It's been very interesting to watch. But she's lovely and generous, and English is her second language. I say sometimes she'll say a line and she'll put in like a nonsensical word or two, and you realize that sometimes it's almost as if she's working phonetically, because she's doing this translation in her head, and for her to be so funny while doing that, it's got to be exhausting. It's still her second language, so she still thinks in Spanish. It's amazing. But with Ed, here's Ed, the seasoned actor, and Ed, we're going to put you with this, and he was already going, all right, so she'll be the pretty one, but she won't be necessarily the best actor or the funniest one, but she'll be pretty, and all right. No, she's as funny as anybody.
Now, the show picked up some flack about the Colombian jokes. Has that affected you at all?
No. And especially not her. She loves them. Again, they're not jokes about, well, some of them are jokes about Colombia. Some of them are people's perceptions, and we try to play around with that. But we try to hit everybody. We do our best to take shots at everybody equally. We want the show to have edge. We don't want to be mean-spirited. We really try hard not to be mean-spirited and take cheap shots. So I'll stand by the vast majority, 99.9% of the jokes I'll stand by. We have a couple that, in hindsight, go, yeah, we could have done without that. But that's what happens.
Julie Bowen as Claire.
Again, well, the interesting part of that was Julie Bowen was 8 months pregnant with twins when we shot the pilot. So there were a large number of people who said, you can't cast her because we need to shoot this pilot, and she's not pregnant in the show, so how will this work? And we saw a billion Claires. And we even attempted to get some other Claires along the way because we didn't think Julie was going to be viable for this. And again, a theme to my life, thank God for the things that never happened. We got lucky. She charmed us, as Julie is ridiculously funny in real life. She hadn't shown that color to this extent ever on television because she's so pretty. She's often cast in that role, the serious one. She's so smart. Julie is brilliant and quick, and but she was often the beautiful straight woman and the strong straight woman in the part. So she hadn't really had a great chance to flex these muscles. And we didn't know what we were getting, but we just knew that we liked her. We knew that there was something just lovable about her and that she was a good balance for Phil. And at one point when people were saying you can't do it, we said, listen, the only reason you make a show is for success. You don't make a show because you want to make a good pilot or whatever. And so for this thing to be a success, that's a 8 to 10 year proposition. Don't make an 8 to 10 year decision based on a 1 month problem. We'll work it out. We'll do our best to shoot around it, and if we have to do some reshoots, we will. So in the pilot, we fully expected to have to reshoot some things, but we just hit it very cleverly. Our director, Jason Weiner, and our costume people and our props people, she was always carrying laundry around and folding towels and standing behind kids and standing behind counters, and whenever she bent over, there was a big drapey sweater that covered it, and no one knows. It worked fine. And of course, she, again, exceeded all our expectations. A brilliant physical comedian. So smart, so funny, so subtle. And in my opinion, Claire is the center of the show.
Ty Burrell as Phil.
Okay, we worked with Ty. Chris had worked with him on a show, Out of Practice, and said, this guy is so good. So when we did Back to You, we had a part as a reporter. We cast Ty. I became a fan. And there was no one else in our mind. There is just nobody. He's the nicest person on the planet. He is as funny as anybody and talented as anybody I've ever seen do this. And I put him in the same category as David Hyde Pierce and Kelsey Grammer and anybody else of that caliber. I think Ty plays at that level. He's precise. He just finds what's funny about every single moment without an ounce of bullshit. 1 minute of actory this or da-da-da. It's just, I'm going to make this as funny as I possibly can. And I'm going to make you laugh right now, and I'm going to go give some money to charity, and I'm going to charm everybody and send you a gift. It's just, so the network didn't want him. They didn't think they had cast him in a role, in a pilot where he played a dull character. The character was by design the dull guy. Ty, being very good, played the role and made him dull. And the network said, he's dull. It became a very long, drawn-out battle, but we eventually won. We shot a screen test in my backyard of him shooting his son, and that won him the role.
What about the character of Phil?
As Ty would say, Phil is a meadow. He's the cool dad. That's something that I said to whenever my kids were ashamed of me, like they didn't want me to drop them off at the party, or they acted a little bit, like as kids do. I would always go to my wife, why are they acting ashamed of me? I'm the cool dad. Like, I have a TV show, and I dress like them, and I listen to the same music. Why would? And that became a little bit of the beginnings of Phil. He's the fourth child, but pure heart. He's the good cop, declares bad cop, and his goal is to be the greatest dad in the world.
Is he the closest to you, or do you?
Well, in the beginning he was, because a lot of the stories in the beginning were things that had happened to me, and there were always aspects of Phil in all of us, and all the fathers in that rewrite room, frankly. But I don't know. I eventually have come to realize that I'm really more like Claire, and that I'm never happy with that realization. My wife lives, Phil lives in the moment. You can either fill out the form for the insurance that the kids need for school, or you could go out in the yard and play catch with them. Well, Phil's going to go play catch. My wife's going to go play catch. I'm going to go fill out the form because they need it. That is a mass generalization of that. But, I think in a lot of ways Phil is, what I hear from a lot of, especially women who watch the show, they all love Phil. They wish their husbands were Phil. He seems like in a lot of ways, the perfect husband, because he's a little bit goofy, but he's just pure love and fun. And there are times I wish I were a bit more like Phil.
Jesse Tyler Ferguson as Mitchell.
I think Jesse was the very first person we cast. He originally came in to read for Cam, and he read for Cam, and we said, would you mind coming back to read for Mitchell? And he said, oh yes, please, thank you. I'm much more of a Mitchell. And we'd seen him in a number of things on theater, doing theater, on some shows. We knew people who had worked with him. They all said the same thing: brilliant, great guy, grab him. He goes fast, so we did. He's got such a unique voice that I love writing for him. I love hearing him do a long, interesting speech with a lot of back and forths and asides, because he's brilliant at that. His patterns are so unique. I love hearing him. My wife has a major crush on Jesse. She just loves him.
Eric Stonestreet as Cam.
Yeah, that's a great story, because Eric was the day player who was working steadily as a guest actor for 12 years out here, doing commercials, and always funny, always delivered, never got his big break. He came in, we had looked at a lot of cams, we were really struggling. He came in, he gave a brilliant audition, and he left the room, and we're like, I don't know, I don't see it. I don't see him and Mitchell together. I don't know. Because we were two straight guys playing matchmaker, and we just didn't understand. We really I don't know, I see his type as being more, we were playing that game, and we didn't know. Fortunately, our casting director, Jeff Greenberg, who happens to be gay, is like, no, it's this, and this is why, and they did, and I think at one point, we continued our search and brought Eric's name back up, and he came back in again, and it was clear he just brought such precision to the role. He was a breakout waiting to happen. Eric was just waiting for that right role. He had all the goods. He'd put in all the time. He's exactly that story that you love. He put in all the time. He paid his dues, and his big break came, and he was ready to burst through that door.
Rico Rodriguez as Manny.
How could you not love that face? It's quirky. It's weird. It's like just a weird character. We talked a lot about Manny. For a while, Manny was going to have Asperger's, because that was a subject that I was really fascinated by. I had a good friend with a son with Asperger's, and the kid was always doing frustrating, hilarious, endearing, amazing, surprising things. And I went, who better to frustrate Jay? And we played around with that for a long time, and the fear was it got too serious, that it would be tough going down the line. And then we stumbled upon the notion of Manny as a 12-year-old Antonio Banderas. Manny is a lover, and when we would pitch him, we would sit around, because we pitch in voice when we're trying to come up with jokes and whatever, and we would sit around and say, why can't I take an over? Why can't I pursue her? You took an older lover, and he would speak like a romantic from times long gone by. And that's loosely came from Chris's son, who, when he was about 8 years old, for Christmas asked for a burgundy smoking jacket. So we liked that idea of we wanted a kid who was a challenge to Jay in a different way that Mitchell had been a challenge to Jay. So we didn't want him to be gay, but we wanted him to be just as frustrating to Jay, and so this was a good combination. I will say this about Rico: we didn't know if he could handle it after the pilot. We're like, I don't know how good of an actor he is. We couldn't understand half the things he said in the pilot. He was so young, and I said to his mom, once we got picked up, I said, please do me a favor, send him to diction classes over the break. Much to his mom's credit, I love her. She's great. She did, and the kid came back like a different actor. He had self-confidence. I could understand everything he said. He was always on the money. It was an amazing transformation. He blew me away.
Oh. Sarah Hyland as Kaylee.
We were down to 2 Haleys. I don't know what it was. She just looked believable to me. You'd stick that BlackBerry in her hand, and she became my daughter. And plus those eyes, they're so expressive, and she's adorable. And we shot a scene with her, with Ty, at my house for that screen test, and in our kitchen, and she's so real. There's not a fake moment in her performance, I find. It just rings true. I never hear anything but that. She is exactly my daughter right now. And she is so under the radar. She comes in here, she's always tired, and she's, walks in and she's drinking gigantic iced teas 8 in the morning, and this and this, and then action, and perfect. It's perfect. You wouldn't change a thing. And then cut. It's crazy.
How do your families feel about their stories being incorporated into the show? Are there rules about that?
They get a kick out of it. The only time there's been a problem is when I try to use a real name, because I just like the kid's name, and my daughter made me change it because she said that he'll know I'm talking about him at home. So, but they get a kick out of it, and we always watch the show together, and it's fun for me when they don't know certain things are coming that are lifted directly. So recently there was a fight that erupted between Alex and Haley. And I'm sitting there, and we're all watching, and the fight happens. And then I look over, and they're both looking at me. Because it was exact. They know those moments. There are a lot of them. Especially in the beginning, there were a lot of them.
Did they ever go, "You are not to use this," as it's happening?
Yeah, yeah. That put down the phone, because I'm trying to write it down. Put it down. Or my wife will say, "Be in this moment. Don't write about it." That will happen. A crazy little thing. This is kind of weird. Remember I told you about that pilot I wrote about my family? That pilot, again, which was written 2 years before Modern Family, was about a guy who it was about me. It was about a guy who has a family show on television that is like his family. And so he's wrestling with two families. His real family at home and his fake family that depicts his family at home and all the stuff that goes with it. It's weird that is now, that pilot I wrote then is more true now than it was when I wrote it.
Wow.
Because some of those moments from that pilot have actually come to be true. It's very strange.
I have two more cast members, Ariel Winter as Alex.
Yeah. I don't know what it was. She just had that quality. Ariel is the person who I would say, I pulled her aside at the end of last season, and I said, I took her to my office and I said, I just have to tell you how proud I am of you. Because in the beginning she was a little bit undisciplined, and she would chime in with things and like ad libs and stuff like that and da da da. Anyway, to me, she's grown so much in this role. Like I think she's now such a force to be reckoned with. She plays that part very authentically, and she is dead on. You write the most complicated speech in the world every time. She's perfect. And it feels real, and I just think she's growing leaps and bounds as a person, which is a wonderful thing. Because one of the reasons that we didn't want to do this show is working with kids. It's tough. It can be tricky. We all know the stories of the child actors who get screwed up by this. They don't have real childhoods, etc. So we didn't want to do that. We've gotten very lucky with the people that we've hired. They've exceeded all our expectations. They can deliver the jokes as well as any adult. We can count on them 100%. But what I take, what I'm very proud of is that these are kids who are, unlike on some shows, like if you're on, a big wacky Disney Channel show where, in my opinion, quite often these kids are learning bad habits of how acting habits and that are going to be hard to break. I think these kids are learning from the best. And they're in an atmosphere that is full of love, and people care about them like they are their own children. I feel that responsibility toward them. Chris does. Julie Bowen and Ty feel that way about their kids in that show. Ed O'Neill and Sophia feel that way about Manny. Eric and Jesse feel that way about the Lilies that we've had, and now Aubrey. I don't know what it is. We feel, and I feel like the kids are going to come out of Modern Family and it'll be a positive experience in their lives and not one that will screw them up forever and cause them to rob liquor stores.
One more kid, Nolan Gould.
Yeah, the surprise of the show in a lot of ways for us, the way he just kind of came in, didn't know what he had. He was a wild card. We just thought he was just kind of funny, quirky, weird kid. Is brilliant, is smarter than, maybe the smartest person on the stage might be Nolan Gould. He is a genius, a real genius, like Mensa, IQ genius. He can do anything. He plays instruments. You are talking to an adult when you were talking to Nolan. He's, what is he, 14, 13 now? 13, 14. He's at grade level 5 grades ahead of him. He's a brilliant kid who I think I will be working for someday. I hope. I hope he will hire me someday because he will be running this town. But as funny as it gets, and as often some of his funniest moments have been things that he came up with.
So the last 2 seasons, you've won the Emmy Award.
Yeah.
How's that affected you? Were you surprised that you've won?
Well, I don't know. Am I surprised? I mean, if I look back on my life 4 years ago, I would have, been surprised. I felt we were doing really good work, and I felt going into those shows or those award shows, we had a good chance, as good as anybody's. Awards are funny things. Certain awards are very meaningful, or more meaningful than others and to me, the most meaningful awards are those that come from your peers, the ones who are doing the same job that you're doing. And I remember during that 6-month break, when I checked out for a while, and I had a conversation with my agent, and he said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, I want to create a show that wins awards. And it's not because I want the award show moment or that. It just meant what's better than working on something that everybody who does what you do for that moment in time, or the majority of the people who do what you do in that moment in time, say you're doing it as well as anyone. There's a lot of for a person who's churning in life to achieve and to do good work, and during that 6 months, and I remember going through some stuff where I was like just feeling kind of down, and one day in talking to someone, I said, I think it boils down to the fact that it's frustrating because I don't feel like I'm doing the work I'm capable of doing. And if I didn't feel like I could do it, it wouldn't be as frustrating to me. But it's frustrating because I feel like I can do it, but it just, for whatever reason, hasn't come together. And I could sit around and talk about it all day and talk about all the reasons why I should be okay with that. And it's okay because you have a nice life, and isn't life, at the end of the day, I sort of said, I'm probably not going to be fully content until I feel like I'm doing the best work that I'm capable of doing. And that's, to me, what Modern Family is. And the awards are just a nice little affirmation of that. But that's the thing that allows me to finally take a deep breath, relax, stop spinning my wheels, stop churning in my brain. Okay, now you're at a place. You have the people and those actors. You have the collaborators and those writers. You have a network that's behind you. You have a studio that supports you. It doesn't get better than this in this job. This is it. This is the pinnacle. It's never going to be better than this. And so now I take that in every day and I try to enjoy every moment. There are frustrating days where we sit there and don't break a story, or it didn't work out as well as we had hoped, or whatever. But that's the little part. The big part is this very soft, welcoming net that is the fact that it doesn't get better than this.
That's beautiful. So we're running out of time, but I do want to ask you, what can we expect to see for the next season?
Well, we had that big surprise at the end of this past season. Did you all see the season finale? Well, so, that was, we felt like the jolt that we needed with Gloria getting pregnant. It throws this family it changes things. And that's what we wanted, to try to keep it fresh and try to keep developments, coming. The difficult part about this show is that in every episode we're telling 3 to 4 to 5 stories per episode. It's a lot of stories that we burn through. And so I think the biggest challenge will be to keep coming up with stories, and for the show to not feel like we're repeating ourselves in some way. And it will get harder every year, but we'll do our very best. Well,
thank you so much, Steve. I hope we can come back to you in a few years and check up and see how things are going.
I hope you can come back to me in a few years too.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.